All right, who is Declan Doyle? The Bears hired all three of their coordinators last night. Declan Doyle will be the OC. Dennis Allen will be the DC. Richard Hightower staying on as the special teams coordinator. But Declan Doyle, somewhat of an unknown. Well, on today's show, we're going to tell you everything that we know about the new Bears offensive coordinator. Before we do that, spread the word of this show, this video. Let's get the Declan Doyle info out to as many Bears fans as possible. All you got to do is click that share icon and fire away. X, Instagram, Facebook, text it to your buddies, Snapchat. They give you a lot of options when you click that share icon. Let's go. Declan Doyle time here on Chicago Bears Now. I'm Harrison Graham. Appreciate everybody for starting their week with us here on Chicago Bears Now. So, Declan Doyle, let's tell you everything we know, and then we'll make a couple of interesting comparisons later in the video about coaches who have had similar paths in the past. Let's talk personal information first. So, 28 years old, very young guy, right? I mean, you think about this. A 28-year-old, I'm 31. He's 3 years younger than me, and he is the offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. Not calling plays, but still, it's pretty remarkable to think about. He went to college. He was also a student assistant coach there. We'll get into that part of it here in a little bit. And he is the son of Chris Doyle, longtime Iowa strength and conditioning coach, and worked for the Jags for a grand total of 1 day. Yes, that Chris Doyle. A lot of you guys are probably familiar. I know there's a few Iowa fans who watch this show. After 20 years with the Hawkeyes, they split with Doyle because there was racism allegations. Actually, former Bear James Daniels had mentioned that as well after he had already left, and the school, due to backlash, basically just gave him a settlement and moved on. And there was so much backlash that Urban Meyer tried to hire him in 2021, and after 1 day, Doyle resigned, and he has not coached since. So there is that. Now, let's be clear. I mean, is that on Declan Doyle? Like, I don't think we can hold Declan Doyle responsible for something his dad may or may not have done. We don't know all the details. I would imagine in most of these cases there's probably some truth to it. How much? Who knows? I wasn't there. If you guys are there, feel free to DM me and pass along information. I'm not sure, but I don't know if we can hold Declan responsible for something his dad was accused of either. Okay, so let's get into his actual coaching background. So I mentioned he went to Iowa. He was a student assistant coach there. Obviously, his dad being the strength and conditioning coach probably helped him get that gig. So we got a lot of valuable experience there. Kirk Ferentz has been a longtime college football coach. Iowa's had a lot of success over the years, so he's learned the ropes doing that. And he came so highly recommended that Sean Payton hired him to be an offensive assistant in 2019 with the New Orleans Saints, which quick math, that would have made him 22 years old, 23, one of those, when he got his NFL coaching start. And not only was Sean Payton there, Dan Campbell was there. There's the connection, Ben Johnson. He worked under Dan Campbell there for 2 years. Campbell gets the Detroit job, was there with Payton for 3 years. Payton took a year off. Then the head coach became Dennis Allen, who is now the Bears defensive coordinator. So you're seeing these dots start to be connected there. And then beyond all that, he goes to Denver when Sean Payton gets back into coaching. He thought so highly of him. He brought him to be the Broncos tight end coach for these past couple of years. So I do think, number one, is clearly Sean Payton likes him. And that carries weight for me. Sean Payton in the last 20 years in the NFL is on the shorthand, I don't know, you can count on one hand of most influential offensive minds in the sport. I mean, you would go Andy Reid, the McVay and Shanahan now I think have entered that, but Sean Payton, like that's kind of the list over the last 20 years or so, the most influential offensive minds in the history of the sport, the history being the last 25 years. And Sean Payton has hired him fresh out of college and hired him again when he got his second NFL head coaching job with the Denver Broncos. That speaks volumes to me. More on Declan Doyle coming up. I want to dive into him a little bit more here. But first, I do want to tell you guys about today's sponsor. That is Game Time. No football this upcoming week, which is sad, but obviously we got the big game coming up here in about 13 days or so if you want to get tickets to that, or obviously go watch your local teams play, Bulls, Blackhawks, or wherever you live you should do so with our friends over at Game Time. How about a non-sporting event? How about Disney on Ice? They're going to be at the United Center this week on the 30th. You see that photo on the right side of your screen. We'll keep it here for a second. The highlighted deal there is a super deal. Lower level, $52 all-in pricing. We toggled on Game Time Picks, which is going to filter out thousands of tickets as well, show you the best available tickets in a short manner within your price range. And you can get in for $50 a pop, 52 to be exact, all in pricing. Take your kids out. Should be a fun time. Obviously, if you're more of a sport junkie, go check out the Bulls, the Blackhawks, plenty of games there. Steph Curry and the Warriors coming to town soon, so get on top of that. But tons of benefits with Game Time. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed, views from the seats, and a whole lot more. Check it out right now. Download the app. We'll have a link in the comments and description for you to do so. Create an account and then use promo code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. Only terms do apply. That is Game Time. Code CHATSPORTS, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. What time is it? It is game time. Okay, so let's actually look at the tight end production because that is the position group that Declan Doyle was in charge of. Well, doesn't take a genius. Anybody who sort of follows the sport at all, this is obviously bad production, right? Like, not a single tight end had more than 200 yards. But we do have to look at the names, right? Adam Trotman, Lucas Kroll, Nate Adkins. I think they were both UDFAs who made the team and have at least developed a little bit. So, ideally you give Doyle credit for that. Greg Dulcich has fallen off a cliff. He's had a lot of injuries here as well. The production's bad. I mean, there's no way around it. Is that on Doyle? I don't know. Like this year, I think the Bears are a good example. The Bears tight end production, I mean, Kmet almost had 500 yards, but for him, that was a down year. Mercedes Lewis and Gerald Everett did nothing. Is that on the tight end coach, right? Like, we know Cole Kmet's a good player. Gerald Everett before this year was averaging like 400 yards. So I think sometimes there's context to all this stuff that you do have to consider. So, it's hard to place, a pie chart percentage of blame. But obviously it's on the resume. Didn't get much out of the tight ends there. That is the position group he is in charge of. I think you've got to think here that Ben Johnson taking a swing on this young guy, I think he's leaning heavily on Campbell and Sean Payton here, right? The connection, the influence there. Hey, this guy is somewhat of an unknown. He's in the mix to be my offensive coordinator. Sean, Dan, whoever he's talking to, other guys, like, what do we know about him? Obviously, I can't tell you the intricacies of those conversations. I don't know everything about Declan Doyle. I'm telling you everything that I've learned as of less than 24 hours since they've hired the guy. But I got to think that Ben Johnson bringing this guy on board, he feels pretty comfortable that this is a rising coach in this industry and has a chance to maybe be the next Ben Johnson in 10 or 12 years, where he learns the ropes and steadily climbs in the industry. And we'll see where it goes from there, obviously. Grade the hire of Declan Doyle. A, B, C, D, or F. Drop a letter grade down in the comments section below. Look, on paper, I'll give it a C. I mean, I can't give it a high grade. We don't know enough about him. I do think it's a calculated type of risk. There's definitely risk there. But if he was the play caller, I'd be way more concerned. I'd be like, whoa. 28-year-old who's been a position coach for a couple of years. The position group he coached didn't have much success. Yes, Sean Payton, Dan Campbell influence, but he's going to call plays 28, really? Well, that's not the case here. Ben Johnson needs someone he can trust and someone that is going to put in the extra work. Ben Johnson said it. Hey, what I'm looking for in an offensive coordinator is someone who's very detailed, someone who's going to have a good work ethic, and someone who's going to work late nights, a.k.a. I need someone who's going to go above and beyond to help with some of the film study and all those other things, because I won't be able to do as much of that because I'm in charge of the whole team, not just the offense and the offensive game plan install. So, the late nights part of it should be easy. I mean, he's 28. I don't know. I haven't found out if he's married with kids or not, but at 28 years old, you should have limitless energy and be willing to put in the extra hours, because that's what it takes in the coaching industry, especially if you want to keep rising. So I definitely think he checks some boxes. He obviously doesn't check others because he doesn't have the experience that other people do. But there are two fairly recent examples that have been on similar coaching paths. Kyle Shanahan, he's a pretty good head coach, right? Well, Gary Kubiak hired him as the offensive coordinator in Houston at 27 years old. Sean McVay, we've heard about him, right? He's done a decent job. He was hired as the Washington offensive coordinator at 28 years old under Mike Shanahan, Kyle's father. You talk about Kyle first here. Similar to Doyle, who's worked under Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan worked under Jon Gruden, who at the time in the early mid-2000s was considered one of the best offensive minds of his generation. No question about it. Guy won a Super Bowl with Tampa, went to another one with the Raiders. Kubiak ends up hiring him. Sean McVay also worked under Gruden, also had already been hired by Mike Shanahan to be his tight ends coach in Washington before getting promoted to OC. So when you look at this and you look at Declan Doyle when comparing him to Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, what do they have in common? They're young and they've worked under high-level offensive coaches in this league, most notably Sean Payton, but also Dan Campbell, who's done a hell of a job with the Detroit Lions. Now, that doesn't mean a damn thing. That doesn't mean that this is the next Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan or even Ben Johnson. I'm just saying there is precedent here. Young guy, probably getting a title a little earlier than most would, but giving this opportunity based on his work under a high-level offensive coach like Sean Payton. So I don't know if it'll work. Maybe it's awesome. Maybe it's terrible. And 12 months from now, Ben Johnson realizes he needs someone more experienced. Who knows? But he's not calling plays, which kind of mitigates the risk. I think it's a calculated swing here. Would I have done it if you're asking me? David Shaw has more experience. He's never been an NFL coordinator, though. He hasn't coached the last few years. He's been an exec. So, it's not like that would have been risk-free either. Would I have gone with someone more experienced? Probably. But you also did that at defensive coordinator, which was much more important because Johnson's heavier voice is going to be on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't mind it. I think there's risk. I don't know if I personally would have done it as a first-time head coach, but there is precedent here with other examples working in the past. What is your favorite assistant, I don't know why I put head coach hire, just coaching hire for Ben Johnson so far? I think for me it has to be Dennis Allen. Safe, high level. Sometimes they're safe with limited ceiling. I'm not saying it's limitless ceiling with Dennis Allen, but the ceiling's pretty damn high because A, he's very unlikely to get a head coaching job again, and B, he's very proven as a defensive coordinator. So it's kind of hard to pick one better than that. But, there's been a lot of good ones. I like the Al Harris. I like that he brought two guys over from Detroit and Antoine Randall and JT Barrett. So the Declan Doyle one's definitely the biggest swing and wild card hire so far. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. All right, there you go. Everything I've been able to find out about Declan Doyle in the last 16, 18 hours. Wanted to pass that along to you. We will be back live this afternoon around 4 o'clock Central Time, so subscribe and turn on notifications.